Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to Wasteland Talks, my weekly talk show where I talk about whatever the hell I want. And this is a new spoiler talk episode for the Star Wars Disney Plus series, Ahsoka. And I have Mike Hilty and his cat here. And Mike is one of the biggest TV watchers that I know. So I wanted to have him to come on and talk about Ahsoka. And Mike, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk TV always.
And there you go. And what are your general thoughts on Ahsoka?
I'm a little torn on this one because I did not watch Clone Wars or Rebels or anything like that. And I got to admit, I was a little lost sometimes. I didn't know what was going on. However, I'm not someone who thought that it was completely dependent for me to watch it, for me to appreciate what Ahsoka did. It got me to invest in these characters, this close knit group that has been through a lot together.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a journey to try to find their long lost missing friend. Would I have liked a little bit more context as to what happened to? Are we doing spoilers right off the bat,
Yep.
or should I? Okay.
This is all spoilers all the time, so let's do it.
All right. I would have liked a little bit more context about what actually happened to Ezra. Why, what was their relationship like? How are they so close? How did they meet? All of that stuff. This show is not interested in giving you any of that. And that is fine. That is their choice. But at the same time, if there's only a finite amount of time that one has to watch television, and if I did not have the time, or quite frankly, the bandwidth, because it's a lot to get through both of those shows in order to understand a lot of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can't invest that type of time in something like that. But it's not like I walked away from this thinking that, boy, I feel stupid because I didn't understand 90% of this. I think this is great. I really liked it. I think I would have loved it had I had that backstory and that background knowledge that those other two shows clearly gave a lot of other fans.
So I have watched the first two seasons of Clone Wars. I haven't gotten through the rest of it. So I did have enough understanding of Ahsoka as a young girl because she was like 14, like fighting in a war and shit. So like there's that. I know her story. I know the rest of her story from Clone Wars, so I'm aware of the fact that like something happened and she got blamed and she leaves the Jedi Order, except she's integral in the Battle of Mandalore at the end of the Clone Wars and defeating Darth Maul, who took over Mandalore. So like that's a big part of Ahsoka's life. I have seen all of Rebels. So like I had all the context of this group and their relationships. And I feel like for Ahsoka particularly, and this could be a misjudgment on my part, but like I felt like watching Rebels and seeing her in Mandalorian gave me enough to get where her character is coming from. You might have gotten some more context for the episode, where Anakin shows up, to really understand their relationship, because it's one of those things where it's purely in the animated shows. Like you would not get any context at all watching the films that it never even alluded to in Revenge of the Sith that Anakin had a Padawan. So like there's that. Yep. So there's just that context. Rebels certainly helps because Ezra, Sabine, their dynamic and why they care so much about each other. You understand where Hera basically is a mother figure to Ezra because Ezra's master was Hera's love. And boy, did I almost cry with what happened to Kanan Jarrus, aka Freddie Prinze Jr.'s character in Rebels. I was so like I know Freddie Prinze Jr. does not want to do any random cameos in anything anymore, especially after Rise of Skywalker, where they used his voice. So like I'm not surprised they didn't make any like Kanan references like popping up in this, but all that context, I love this show. This is one of my favorite Rebels legitimately is one of my favorite Star Wars properties, and this is such a great sequel to it. Which this is,
Yes,
for all of you that don't know this,
it is.
Ahsoka is a sequel series to Rebels because it literally picks up the story all these years later, which Rebels took place before A New Hope.
Yep.
And in Star Wars context, in canon, one of the biggest threats of the Empire was Grand Admiral Thrawn, who disappears before New Hope even happened because of Ezra, making him disappear with giant sea whales that can go through hyperspace. Purgles.
Obviously.
And if you haven't watched Rebels, then you probably don't understand, or watching Clone Wars, that Dave Filoni goes hard on like the Force mythology of things, because he is like a disciple of George Lucas and really brings that out. And it's why Ahsoka, the series, is full of it's full of rhymes and reflections of things, and why you see these ripples happening in
Yeah.
stories and similar arcs and stuff like that. Because that's Star Wars. That's George Lucas's Star Wars. Dave Filoni is continuing George Lucas's Star Wars. Unlike the sequel trilogy, which definitely is not George Lucas's Star Wars,
No.
it's J.J. Abrams' interpretation of what he loves about Star Wars. Dave Filoni is continuing what George Lucas wanted Star Wars to be. And I think Ahsoka is very much that. I guess some of the things that really stood out to me, at least, that I really liked about this season, I feel like everybody will say this. I loved Balin Skull.
Yes.
He's such a compelling villain, antagonist, should
Yeah.
say, in this story. And I felt like this first season did a great job of building up intrigue and mystery about his place in this, and makes me very excited for a season 2 to see where his arc completes. It's just an unbelievable shame that
Yes.
Ray Stevenson isn't going to be the one to do it.
Yes. I would agree with that. Hey, Star Wars, a novel concept. If you've got a compelling villain, let him live, or her. Villains can also be women as well.
Yep.
But what a smart decision to have to develop this villain and to keep him around. Because guess what? That worked pretty well with Darth Vader, and that worked pretty well with even the Emperor. I thought it was a pretty big mistake that in the Phantom Menace that they killed Darth Maul very quickly.
And then they realized that it was a big mistake, and then
Yep.
just brought him back anyway.
Brought him back
So,
with the weirdest of context and just in many different iterations. But yeah, they figured out pretty quick that we should not have done that. So and you're right, with Ray Stevenson gone, unfortunately, now the question becomes, who are you going to pick to fill this void?
the
Because
question
you
is,
can't.
can you convince Gerard Butler to come and be a Star Wars show?
Have you seen Gerard Butler's filmography? You can convince Gerard Butler to be in anything at this point.
The answer is they better get Gerard Butler to come in and be, because like I feel like he definitely has the presence and similar look. I really enjoy Ray Stevenson. I think he's fun as Volstagg, no matter how little the Warriors 3 got in the Thor movies to
Yeah.
work with. I really appreciated his Punisher. I think Punisher Warzone came out at a time that people were just not ready for that. Um, and I still need to watch RRR, and I heard he's really good in that too.
What are you waiting for? Like, what do you
It's on
mean you
my watch
haven't?
list. I have like 1,200 movies on my watch list, Mike.
I thought
And
you were
if
about
it
to say
was
I've seen
shorter,
1,200. I thought you were about to say that you've seen 1,200 movies in like the last like couple of years because you watch
well,
more
I
movies than.
have, but
You know,
I've seen 600 new movies this year so far. If it were a shorter movie, I would have squeezed it in quicker at some point, but it is coming up on my watch list to watch. But I heard
okay,
really good
okay.
things about him in it.
Mhm.
I love his ambiguity. Also love the meme. I miss the idea of it. Like that popping up everywhere is fantastic. He just brings a presence to Balin, and I love the fact that he is based off of a medieval knight with his
Yes.
fighting style. Like that's another big thing I loved about this show is the very specificness of the fighting styles, which I'm going to just get this out. If I have to hear another person talk about how these fight scenes were mid because they're not flippity flips, and like in the prequels,
Do
I get
are
it.
people are
Yes,
people saying that? Because
yes.
I I love the fight sequences in this
I
for
feel
two
like
reasons. Go ahead.
I was
Sorry.
just gonna say,
It's your
I
show.
feel like
It's your
there's
show. Oh
just
God.
there's a lot of people that if it isn't as acrobatic as it was in the prequels, it's shit. And that really makes me mad because that is not what they're going for in this series because they don't fight that way.
No, they
Those are
don't. This is
very specific fighting styles that Obi-Wan and Anakin had in the
Mhm.
prequels.
Right. Between back back in the day when lightsaber duels were much more common and Jedi's were much more prevalent, yes, you are going to get more variance in terms of fighting styles and everything like that. How many years passes by between Revenge of the Sith and this? A lot.
Ahsoka's a
So,
middle-aged woman.
yeah, it's
Balin is a middle-aged man. Like,
so it's going to be different. And I guess I'm one of those people who I don't mind the more toned down and more intimate fight scenes. Look, I'm looking for a healthy balance between what we get in the prequels, which when I was a kid was great. It was a lot of fun to watch that. But I also don't want it to revert all the way to how Darth Vader and Obi-Wan fought in the first Star Wars movie, where they clearly did not know what they had in these
correct.
lightsabers. Um, but I feel like this strikes the perfect balance because the fight sequences, I thought they were really well staged. They were, some of them were edited a little heavily, but then there were some good longer shots where you get to see a lot of the fighting styles. And I think one of the things that I like about this, especially since I don't have that background knowledge from Clone Wars and from Rebels,
Mm-hmm.
you don't get to see very, very many women fighting with lightsabers. So to get to see that, I
Mm-hmm.
thought was really cool, considering that for the most part, in most of the Star Wars movies, it's just dudes. That's
Well,
it.
Sabine's untrained. So like one, she she's not very she hasn't trained a whole lot. She hasn't practiced in years. So like it's the same thing with Ray. Like it's
Oh,
sloppy.
yeah. And that's okay.
It
There's
is.
nothing wrong with that.
Ezra,
We can't.
interesting choice. Ezra doesn't want to use a lightsaber. when we finally see him later in the season. Balin's a medieval knight. You big swing, and it's like heavy broadsword style fighting. And the coolest damn thing here is that Ahsoka is a samurai. And samurai don't do flippity flips and swing wildly. If you ever watched a samurai fight, go watch any Akira Kurosawa film, which you should because cinema. And
Yep.
or one of the greatest sword fights in the history of cinema from Harakiri is slow, pointed, methodical swings. That's what you do. And that's Ahsoka's style in this. And it's interesting seeing a samurai fighting a knight when her and Balin fight. It's even more interesting watching her fight Anakin in that episode because Anakin is being aggressive, doing his Anakin thing, and she's doing her thing. But she gets, which this is Dave Filoni being Dave Filoni. She beats Anakin with the same fight style that she beats that Inquisitor in Tales of the Jedi, where she straight up, which that's the thing. Like, if you haven't watched all of these things and you're not picking up on this, but she straight up steals an Inquisitor's lightsaber and in one fell swoop chops his head off. She does the same move to Anakin, except obviously doesn't chop his head off. But like, I really like the fighting styles. That episode with Anakin was like the wet dream of every Star Wars, like from all sides.
Okay, wait, hold on, wait a second though. Was it though? Because okay, I liked it. I really liked it. I do not like this revisionist history where all these people who were crapping on Anakin before, like during the prequel days, which I get it. I feel like a lot of those people are older Star Wars people who are grouchy and curmudgeonly, who just like not my Anakin Skywalker. I do love that him and Ahmed Best, they are both getting their day in the sun. I hate what they had to go through in order to get this type of reception that they're both getting now. Because
100%.
Which you see it in interviews and when people stand up and cheer for them, they're both very emotional because the hell that Star Wars fans put them through while they were just doing what they love.
Yeah, they're doing their job and loving the fact they're in a Star Wars movie.
So those Anakin centric, or it's just one mainly Anakin centric episode. It was really great. Just some of the scenes in that and the cinematography with quick cuts between him and Vader and just that was TikTok ruined that for me, but I rewatched it today and I still got
I get goosebumps every single time I see that pop up on TikTok.
It's so good. It was just so well done. And also, that is coming from somebody who has, from a performance standpoint, he knows this character through and through. He played them in 3 movies, and then he's come back a bunch of other times. He just knows what he needs to do. And I'm glad that Hayden Christensen is getting his flowers now for this, because I hope people realize this guy can actually act. He's actually a pretty good actor. Just because Hollywood crapped on him for a long time. It's very unfortunate.
The layers that get added to both Anakin and Ahsoka in that episode, so great. And the Gandalf moment for Ahsoka, where she finally sheds this warrior focus of a Jedi from the Clone Wars, because she was a teenager or less. She was a preteen, bred to fight and be a warrior. And in this, getting to see her shed that and really come into like what a Jedi really should be, because that's one of the biggest echoes in all of Star Wars, is that the Jedi needed to fall because they lost their way.
Yep.
And Jedi, like I loved how Thrawn called her a Ronin
Yeah.
at the end of this, because it just doubles down on her nature as a samurai, but she's a fallen Jedi, and her finding her way back this. And Rosario Dawson is one of my favorite actresses. I love her to pieces. And when she got cast as Ahsoka for Mandalorian, I'm like, yes. And
Pretty perfect casting. Yeah, it's
yep.
pretty perfect casting for that.
Mm-hmm.
So props to them. And it's things like that. It makes me feel confident that they'll find somebody to replace Ray Stevenson. No
Yep.
problem. No
Whether it's
problem.
Gerard Butler or not. Natasha Liu Bordizzo, I think, does a really good job as Sabine. I think she really channels that. Um, I think I'm going out on a limb here, and I don't know how people react to this. I think I have a new favorite droid, because Hu Yang
Mhm.
is amazing. I love Hu Yang. I love David Tennant. David Tennant.
David,
Oh my god.
David Tennant was great in this. When I reviewed this on Serialized, the three performances that kind of stuck out to me the most were Ray Stevenson, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, and David Tennant. And I think Hu Yang, the thing that kind of sets him apart is that yes, he is sarcastic and he kind of has a little bit of zip to him, kind of a la. I'm assuming this is how R2D2 would sound if he
You can
did
actually say words.
actually was able to say words to us from the audience. However, I think Hu Yang is just so much more helpful in a lot of different respects, and his background when it comes to the Jedi as
Mm-hmm.
well. He's been there. He's done that. The part where Sabine is like, I really am the worst person ever to go through training, and he's just like, yeah, you kind of are.
He's so
Um,
brutally honest and matter of fact about it.
which is again different from what we get from droids because all the other droids they're meant to help. That's it. And to get a droid that actually has a little bit of personality and has been through a lot and has kind of become this cynical, jaded person that, quite frankly, a lot of people in Star Wars eventually become.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that.
I love his partnership with Ahsoka, because they feel like partners. It
Mhm.
doesn't feel like this is my droid.
Yeah.
Also Chopper showing up, everybody's favorite like murderer. Like Chopper's ready to like murk somebody at any given second. He's so
Mhm.
angry. He's such an
Mhm.
angry little droid.
Yeah.
He has a lot of moments in Rebels. So
Okay.
if you ever see people talking about how he's like everybody's favorite psychopath, it's because Chopper has some serious anger management.
because because the part at the end where Ezra comes back and he, kind of goes up to Chopper and is, kind of petting him, like, do these two know each other? Like, what
Very
is
well.
this? Okay.
Chopper is Hera's droid,
Okay.
and his like Chopper was part of the crew in Rebels the whole entire time. I did really like Mary Elizabeth Winstead's performance. Obviously, Hera didn't get as much to do in this as some of the other characters. I feel like she's probably going to get some more focus in the stopping Thrawn angle of this, because that's where at the end of the season you have the group that's going to be trying to suppress Thrawn until people wake the hell up and realize like the Empire's back, and you have, which I imagine, this force journey that Ahsoka and Sabine are going to go on against Balin,
Mhm.
most likely, and being stuck in this other galaxy. Um, which I think I know it was pretty disappointing that we didn't get like any Balin or Shin Hati in like the last episode until like literally the last second. But Balin was built up to be the antagonist moving forward. And they had the mechanism of like we needed to bring Thrawn back. And Thrawn outsmarted Ahsoka because that is literally what Thrawn does. He's a
Mhm.
chess master. While most people are playing checkers, he's
Yeah.
playing chess.
Mhm.
And my God, his introduction,
Oh, that was
like,
great.
like I imagine as someone who didn't see him in Rebels, you felt how significant he was based off of that entrance.
Yep. With the stormtroopers all lined up and just that Thrawn, Thrawn, Thrawn.
Hmm.
You knew that he was a big deal because everybody is making it to be a big deal. You don't really get the gravity of it until his entrance when he just the way that he's greeted by people. That is how you introduce somebody with some gravity. And I give a lot of credit to some of these TV shows because a scene like that before the advent of just the streaming boom, you only get scenes like that in movies. You don't ever get scenes like that in a TV show. And you and I would know because we watch a lot of shit TV.
Yeah.
So you don't you don't get scenes like that very often where like, I gotta sit up and pay attention to this. It
Mhm.
just doesn't happen on TV, let alone it just doesn't happen that often on Disney Plus of all streaming
Yeah.
networks.
Because
So
most of Disney's shows are shit.
that aren't Marvel
Yeah.
or aren't Star Wars, they're all terrible. And they it's kind of funny that this is a direct sequel to Rebels, which
Mhm.
it's funny because Disney is kind of in this advent right now where they're they're all they're doing right now is focusing less on original content and just remaking
Santa Claus.
their animated stuff. So
That's getting a
it's
second
just
season.
funny. I don't know why. I don't understand. I thought it was just going to be a mini series and just get generally with the way that that ended, it should have just been one season. But I digress.
Mhm.
We're not here to talk about the Santa
No.
Clauses. We're here to talk about Ahsoka.
And them keeping Lars Mikkelsen, who voiced Thrawn, he was perfect. Like, and that's the thing. Thrawn is such a different villain than you see in Star Wars because so many of the villains are like these purely evil. Like the Emperor is like just evil, evil written all over him, or angry. He is so
Yes.
cold and calculating.
And I think that's what I like about Thrawn and Balin. They're
Mhm.
both super calm and they both think very methodically. And that's something that you don't get with a lot of villains in Star Wars. They a lot of them they shout a lot and a lot of them their anger gets the best of them.
Mhm.
And it's kind of nice to get people that can still convey a certain level of evilness and a certain level of dread when you see
Mhm.
them, and you don't have to be over the top. And I think that's what I like about Ahsoka a lot. It's not just them, it's all the characters. Nobody is going over the top in terms of their performance or
Mhm.
anything like that. Unlike when you sometimes get that with The Mandalorian, and you got that a lot with Boba Fett as well. I definitely didn't get that here, and I think that subtleness really helped out. I think the most that you got in terms of emotion is I feel like Shin didn't blink at all during this show because she has crazy eyes.
Yes.
She just
Well, and you
it's
can
great and it
tell
was effective. Yeah.
she she's an interesting character because has that she has this that Sith in her,
Mhm.
and it's like bubbling on the surface. and you can tell Balin doesn't want her to go down that path, but she's like all ready to go down that path. And by the end, she's taken lead of these like mercenaries and stuff like that. And it'll be interesting to see where she goes in this next season. But she I thought she was an interesting element because there's so much about masters and apprentices. Whether it was Thrawn like realizing like Ahsoka was trained by Anakin Skywalker, and the fact that Thrawn's one of the few people who knew that Vader was Anakin. So that's why he had that reaction. He's just like, I'm a little scared about that. Just wait until he finds out that Anakin has a son, which side quick I want to keep this quick side note. Can they just like find a young actor to play Luke in this movie? I just get Sebastian Stan to do it. Come on. He already works for you. So
can I go on another quick sidebar really quick? Did we really need C3PO in this? That was I
feel like the reason we had 3PO is because they didn't want to try to touch not having Leia, because that should have been Leia showing up, but
I guess, but
not having Carrie Fisher there, and like that was I feel like that was like the main piece that felt a little out, like
forced.
Off
it felt very
of like
forced
shoving in there. It felt like it would have made sense because this is I respect Dave Filoni for the balancing act that he has to do here, because he's going to have to retcon a bunch of stuff to help people like the sequels more. With like this whole cloning thing that's going on in The Mandalorian and all that stuff. And he also has some big restrictions of post Jedi time period.
Yeah.
You're supposed to have Leia and Luke and Han as some of the biggest people in the New Republic.
Yeah.
And you're just like, you shot yourself in the foot when you made the decision that people don't want us to recast them because Solo didn't make as much money as they thought. It wasn't Alden Ehrenreich's fault. He was like nowhere near the reason that that movie didn't make that money.
Right. And I don't understand that decision at all, because I think Lucas is also kind of afraid of seeing what happened with the backlash that they got from Anakin. However, I will counteract that with a lot of people still like Ewan McGregor's performance as Obi-Wan. So much so that
people
they gave him his own
Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan.
Own series. So you take the good with the bad and you roll the dice, and I think you can make some really compelling stuff, but I think this is also very much so on the current state of Star Wars fandom as well, who can't let go of the fact that we can have other people in these iconic roles, and there's nothing wrong with that. What are you going to do if you need a Leia from this point forward? Are you just going to
right around it, which is terrible, because this Heir to the Empire film that they're building up to is going to make zero sense if Luke, Leia, Han, and Lando aren't in it. It just wouldn't make any sense. And they're going to, unless they make the decision to do all this CGI crap on people, which please don't, and just decide to cast new people. And if they don't, they're going to have to write some kind of logic to logic all of them out. And there's not enough logic to write them all out.
Well, I kind of disagree with that, because one of the nice things about Star Wars is that you can always say, oh, they're just off planet.
Yeah,
We'll,
but
we'll
what
get
would Leia be doing? Like, if Thrawn is literally the biggest threat to the New Republic, how would all of them just not be involved in some shape or form? To be honest, I can get Luke, Han, and Lando, but I really can't get Leia. And what brought this tangent off is the appearance of C-3PO is their way of trying to get around that.
yeah. And
And 3PO is
that
not going to come in and battle for
well,
Leia.
because the other thing too is that it's Anthony Daniels, right? The guy who plays
Yes,
3PO.
get old.
It's starting to sound a little old. And it's sad because you look at a lot of the core cast members of Star Wars, they're getting up there in age. We've already lost Carrie Russell, or not Carrie Russell. Wow,
Carrie
that's
Fisher.
really, really bad.
Carrie Russell is in Star Wars, if
She
you
is.
remember.
She is in what? Right? Was
Rise
it
of
Last Jedi?
Skywalker.
Yeah, it's a masked person and a very weird storyline.
Yep.
But we lost the guy who plays R2D2 already, and then Peter Mayhew is gone too. So you're gonna if you want some of these characters to stick around, you got to recast them at
Mm-hmm.
at some point. It's very easy for Chewbacca and uh and Kenny Baker because they're in mask the whole time. You're not
And
going to
they
be able
don't
to get away with
actually
them.
say words.
Wait, Kenny Baker isn't just beeping and booping the whole time?
I hope he was, to be honest.
Beep boop beep boop boop.
But to be
That,
fair,
that's that's all it says in
to
the
be
script.
fair, I said words. If you're
That,
beeping and booping, you're just making noises.
that's fair.
Uh,
That's that's fair. But yeah, at some point, Lucasfilms is just gonna have to just sack up and do it and just deal with the backlash.
yep.
Because here's what's gonna happen is that this all these old school Star Wars fans that are gonna be flipping out, they're just not going to watch it. And then this new iteration and this new generation, this is going to be their Han, Luke, and Leia and Lando subsequently.
We already have
That's
a Han and Lando. And I don't think you could have found a better choice than Donald Glover
nope,
for young Lando Calrissian. So
nope. You probably won't be able to find a better choice than that, and that's okay.
too many people shit on Alden Ehrenreich. He's too talented of an actor to get that much disrespect, but that wouldn't stop anybody with Star Wars fandom, would it?
Nope.
Overall, I really love what this season did in terms of bringing Thrawn back, Ezra, which also what the actor's name? Amon
Iman.
Esfandi,
Mm-hmm.
so great as Ezra. I was
Mm-hmm.
afraid that like he'd be this much older, colder type of character. He is wiser and he is still fun. Like Ezra has that energy. He's a bit roguish and he has that great banter still with
Mm-hmm.
Sabine. And I think that really works. The zombie troopers, what a
Oh,
choice
that was.
that was.
I
They're
think
like
that's
dark
something
magic
that
into
I
this.
really liked about this is just some of the uniqueness for the stormtroopers because look, we get it. Stormtroopers have crap aim and that's about it and then they're all the same. I think one of the nice things that particularly the TV shows are starting to get a little bit better at is hey, why don't we upgrade these things for the stormtroopers so that they're not just all being cut down to pieces. That's it. So in this one, I do love the zombie stormtroopers. That was really creative and really cool. And also, that brings perhaps a horror element to all of this because that's what I want to see from Star Wars. I think that could be really cool. But also, in addition to that, I'm liking these stormtroopers that have, armor that even a lightsaber can't really penetrate. I really like how hey, if I shoot these stormtroopers, my blaster is not going to be as effective. So you got to get creative with that, because otherwise all these stormtroopers are just largely the same. And I think that's something that I like about this, because it presents a new level of difficulty for this, and the stormtroopers are not just people to just be mowed down.
Yeah.
Like they've been in literally every other Star Wars property out there right now.
Just keep coming. And the whole entire idea of these dark forces from another galaxy is so interesting. Thrawn having those witches in his back pocket is an interesting layer. And I appreciate Diana Lee Inosanto, who played
Morgan
Elsbeth, because I've heard some criticism of, like, she had her big moment, she turned into this cool thing, and then gets chopped down in that last episode. I feel like her arc is so important to show who Thrawn really is.
Mm-hmm.
And she is the sycophant that worshipped at the altar of Thrawn, and he does not give a shit about her. He just left her to die.
Wow, that sounds like, the current state of what some politics are like right now. But anyways, we're not here to talk about politics at all. But the part
Don't put
where
politics in my Star Wars that's had politics since the beginning.
So
whatever.
I think the great thing about her arc is the scene where Thrawn goes up to her and says, "We need more time," and she just knows what she needs to do at this point. She just accepts it, and she does it, with all the conviction in the world. And that right there was a very effective scene, because given where she was beforehand, to where she is now, yeah, you're right. It shows the power of Thrawn, because he could say that and she just is like, okay, that's fine. I'm not going to go with you. I traveled all this way to get here, but fine. All right.
The cult of Thrawn is so that idea is so compelling, with how he has his, like, Enoch and all of his stormtroopers who will lay down and die for him. And it's so interesting because right now he's saying it's all for the Empire. But is it? Or is it all for Thrawn? And I think that'll be interesting to see how that shakes out, because will he clash with the other remnants of the Empire if they don't agree with him? And I don't want to get into a whole ton of other stuff. Actually, pause real quick. Are there any other things that you specifically want to bring up about the season before I throw out some stuff where this might go after this?
So a couple of things to bring up. I really like the design of the stormtrooper Captain Enoch.
Yep.
Right. I really like the design of his suit, because look, we tried that in the sequel trilogy. It's like, oh, you're clearly different. You've got a shiny, different color uniform. Didn't matter. No, didn't help. didn't do anything. I hope that is this guy a big deal in Rebels, or
I
is this
don't
just
remember Enoch.
Mm-hmm.
I think they mentioned Enoch once or twice, but like he wasn't like a significant figure. I imagine he's gonna be, because he is the leader of Thrawn's forces.
So I'm hoping that turns into something, because the actor, who I don't recall him saying a whole lot of anything, but the actor who plays them is Wes Chatham, who was in The Expanse,
Yep.
As Amos. So I'm very curious about where that goes. I like the dynamic that this new Mon Mothra has with a lot of people, the Genevieve
Mhm.
O'Reilly. I really like her performance, and I like that they're sticking with her
Yes,
in a lot of this stuff.
through
So,
Andor into
mhm.
this and everything. Yeah,
Hey, look at that. You can recast somebody and everything turns
how
out
dare you?
okay. Yeah. So, um, I'm very curious also to see where this is all going with Hera's son Jason as well. Because something's clearly there
Yep.
because, just the way that he found Ahsoka, you know, her lightsabers and everything like that, which that was kind of interesting, I guess, but I'm very curious to see what that's eventually going to turn into. I have a sneaking suspicion that somebody is going to take him on to train him, or actually, it's one of two predictions.
Yep.
Which I guess let's just segue into just teeing you up for
Yep.
all this good stuff. It's as if we've done this before. So I have a feeling that Jason is either going to be trained by maybe Ezra Sabine or be part of Luke's new crew, and then that's
And
going to
we know what
dovetail.
happens to them
Mm-hmm. So
eventually.
and and that's going to dovetail into maybe another spin-off of a spin-off, a dream within a dream, if I may, where like, hey, let's do a spin-off of you know Luke's new Jedi Order.
I feel like that'd be such a missed opportunity if they didn't do that at some point. Like I just feel like that would be such a missed opportunity. But
Right,
you never know.
because it's okay. Star Wars is immune to missed opportunities. Having Lord and Miller direct a solo
Oh,
standalone
let's
movie
not even
and
get
that
into the
and
list of
that
directors that have fallen in and out of potentially doing Star Wars stuff because we'll be here all night.
yeah.
Because there's dozens,
Mhm.
which is very frustrating. But I could definitely see he is the son of uh King Jarrus. He will be a Jedi, no matter what who Yang says. Can you help me build a lightsaber? No.
No, no.
Nope. No kid. Uh, what I see, so the Mortis gods, those
Mhm.
statues that Balin's standing on, or I haven't seen these episodes of Clone Wars, but apparently Anakin interacts with them. And the father is the balance of the force, the daughter is the light side of the force, and the son is the dark side of the force.
Oh,
So they
okay.
might be like this is where the metachlorians and of like the sciency kind of thing of the force and the more religious kind of thing of the force definitely veer away from each other because this is much more mystical, like this the space with between spaces where Ahsoka
Mm.
winds up with Anakin and everything was big in Rebels. That's where it's going. There's one I don't like to do this a whole lot because I don't try to set expectations for things because I just want to see the stories that are being told. But I would love if one character pops up in Ahsoka moving forward and it's the Bendu. And for those who have watched Rebels, you know what I'm talking about. And those who haven't, look up the Bendu from Star Wars Rebels. He is a force based entity that is
Mm.
neutral to the Force and had very interesting interactions with Kanan and fought Thrawn at times. And I just feel like it's the Bendu's going to wind up popping up at some point in all of this. They brought Purgles, they have the Mortis gods. Why not? Um, but where I imagine this going is that season two of Ahsoka, if that's the title of whatever the follow up directly to this is going to be, is Ahsoka's going toe to toe with Balin, trying to stop whatever journey he's on, because I feel like that's her purpose to be there, is to have that confrontation. I feel like Mandalorian season four is going to be the Mandalorians getting caught up with Thrawn and the
Yeah.
rise of his threat. And you have the Rangers and stuff like that, because they're not going to do that separate Rangers show because somebody had to tweet horrible things and shoot themselves in the foot. Um, I feel like that's where that's going. And it's all leading up to Heir of the Empire, which I'm assuming is going to be the title of Dave Filoni's movie, which is the only Star Wars movie confirmed still. Because other point that we brought up earlier.
See, but I feel like this is how you build a new expanded universe now. And this is how the marriage of TV and movies, this is how it makes sense to do it. So if that is how this is going to go, I'm all for it. And I think at this point, Disney and subsequently Lucasfilm should probably dive headfirst into this and put everything else on the back burner. Now, you don't need continuity and everything like that messed up. And you've already shot yourself in the foot a little bit, because if it does ultimately lead to the sequel trilogy, unfortunately, what are you going to do at this point? You can't introduce a whole lot of things that is going to mess up the continuity. It's not like you're Ryan Johnson, who's just, cutting down all the stuff that J.J. Abrams set up, and then J.J. Abrams comes back to try to piece all the things back together. But anyways, I think that if that is the path that they're going to choose, I think that would be great, and it would keep me invested and keep me involved in Star Wars, because right now, between this and Andor, I'm kind of a little bit more confident potentially in the future of Star Wars than I am confident in the future of Marvel right now.
Interesting. I think that's a whole conversation.
Yeah.
But I think anything that Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau has their hands on, I'm confident with Star Wars. Anything not so much, which is why all these projects keep getting canceled.
Yes, and at this point they probably should, because I think they've really got something going on right now between The Mandalorian and Andor's kind of off to the side a little bit because this is pre all of this stuff, but
And
they
Andor
can
only
just
has one season left, and that's going to be
yeah,
done. So,
right.
and that story's complete because that leads into Rogue One, and it's done
Yeah.
its thing. I know James Mangold has this like Bible Tale of the Force, which I think that's pretty cool. And obviously
And
that would be completely
separate.
separate because it's like years in the past. But yeah, at this rate, like Taika Waititi's film's dead, Patty Jenkins' film's dead. All those films, just don't worry about them. Finish this, what we got here, and then worry about it later.
Yep. Let us subscribe to the what the great Ron Swanson said. Don't half-ass two things, whole-ass one. And
Whole
I
ass
think
one thing
I
and give
think
it all
Star
to Dave
Wars
Filoni.
I think Star Wars needs to whole ass this thing and then just go from there.
Yep, absolutely. But what an interesting adventure Ahsoka is and what it opens up in terms of Star Wars. But Mike, thank you so much for coming on and talking all kinds of spoilers about it.
Appreciate you having me on for this. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.